Good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Mary Louise Zapp-Knapp, and I am a member of the seniors at Missoula Senior Center here. And we thought it would be a grand idea to start having these kind of educational, informational sessions. And this first one is on perspectives on aging. I think since you're all here, I'm sure you're all aware of the fact that issues on aging is a hot topic right now, and it's only going to become more so as we baby boomers age and the population grows here in Missoula. The demographics really show that we are going to be growing in numbers and percentages here in Missoula, and our needs are going to be great, and we need to start addressing them now. And so we have a wonderful panel of experts this evening that will present to you, and we'll have all three of them present and then have a time for questions and answers afterwards. I would like to present our first presenter is Nancy Heyer, and from Home Instead. And she is a nurse, an RN, as an expert, and I'm looking forward to hearing from her. Our next panel member is Jim Borowski from Kalispell, from AARP. And he has a wonderful presentation on the We Need to Talk presentation having to do with driving issues, with the aging generation and driving issues and safety. And then we have Bernie O'Connor from the Missoula Aging Services, who will go into depth, I hope, describing the various services, a multitude of services that are available for our aging generation here in Missoula. So please give a welcome to our panel as I pass the mic off. And this is just for the camera.
Great. Wonderful. So it could just project. Can you hear me? How about the camera guy? Are you doing fine? Great. My part of the program is largely born out of a study that was conducted in 2007, asking the question of over 1,000 baby boomers mostly in the United States, North America, and Canada, and asking them if, yes or no, those boomers had had conversations with their parents about aging. And clearly 70-some%, I think it was 73% of those boomers said no, that we had not. And these were people that were age 40-ish. Research was done, and most interesting of these, of the research was to discuss, is this something that is unique to baby boomers? Is it something unique just to the world of being parents and being children? And in fact, the research continued to show that the large majority of the barriers to communication were time immemorial, that they were but one of the largest causes or biggest causes of communication problems about what are we going to do? What do we do when we see mom or dad failing? Led to identifying about 10 different barriers to communication. Now, depending on the crowd that you're talking to, which is pretty interesting, we spent the year 2008 talking about this study in 2008 and early 2009 called the 40/70 Project. And our target audience was 40-year-olds, people in their 40s who were starting to see changes in their parents. And thus came the first publication that our company put out. Since we funded the study through a couple of universities, we put a pamphlet out. And we began doing seminars to talk about the situations, the most common situations that children were running into when they would see some changes with their parents. of course, the driving, the neighbor calls and the dad has hit a light pole. Maybe the mother who used to keep the counters just spitting clean. You're going in and one of the siblings notices that the dishes aren't done every day, or the laundry isn't folded, that there's kind of a neglect of both personal hygiene in the home. So the house is a mess and you never saw that. Certainly forgetfulness, that would be another signal and sign. Then you start to notice, and now you're still the 40-year-old and you go visit and you see these medications all over the house. And you see some of them here and some of them there, and caps on, caps off. Of course, the reason for the caps is because you can't get them off. If you're old enough to take them, you can't remove the lid, but if you're my grandson, he can get it off in a second. We all know that. But there are reasons and there are barriers to the child becoming the parent. And we really are starting to discuss that, and we really talked about sibling communication. You've heard I certainly lived this with my own mother. She had 3 children and she was 3 different mothers. We mourned a completely different person because I was the middle child, I was the peacemaker. The older child stuck her chin out and was the pathfinder, and the younger child was the boy, and I referred to him as Saint Robert. But there's all of that dynamic going on when you all have your opinions and you're adults, and so then you have a discussion about the money. People generally after 85 years of age have outlived their money, and they don't know what to do, and it's certainly a humiliating topic to people to actually have to go and talk to their children. The role is reversed. The last thing is when parents become widowed and they're starting their active dating life, or they don't want to get married again, they just want to go out and have some fun. And maybe they're doing some things with a person that they didn't like or whatever, but that's their own business. Nevertheless, I don't want to spend so much time on the 40-70 talk because I could talk ad infinitum about it, because during that period of time, I was caring or had just finished caring for my own mother. And when I used to give this talk, the first thing that I would do was put a beanie on my head with the propeller, because that was the #1 barrier to communication between the generations was who are you? I paid for you, go to school, I put your diapers on, don't you tell me how to live my life. That's the #1 barrier. So we embarked upon a really positive program on how 40-somethings could speak to their 70-somethings. But in these seminars, what we were finding were that there were a whole lot of 70-somethings coming in there with their 40-somethings, which I thought was quite interesting. And the 70-somethings, or close to 70-somethings, are the far end of the boomers. So all of a sudden, we're starting to see people approaching their 70s and having quite an interest in, hey, wait a minute, I would like to have something to say about this, and while I still think I have all of my marbles, I would like to decide myself how to do this. But I need to figure out a way to communicate to my children, because I do need them, I do love them, I respect them. In general, that's what you want out of your life. And so we did some more research, and we found that the 70-year-olds were just as stumped as the 40-year-olds, and so it became the proverbial elephant in the room. And topics were much the same. Yes, I'm going to drive. I will take the driving test, don't bother me. there were all kinds of things, and it's essentially down to the issue of communication. And we decided that the approach is going to be about the same, but that these conversations do need to take place. But there are some things to make the conversations easier. And so, for one thing, I think we are starting again in the 60s, the age of the 60s. Many of these people have gone to college, a lot more college educated folks that have learned about the concept of being assertive rather than aggressive. So communication techniques such as making I statements and owning what you believe and want is certainly a lot more conducive to having a conversation with anyone who is trying to assert their opinion onto you. Another piece of advice to both 40-year-olds and 70-year-olds is to pick your battles. And let me use an example of that with my own mother. She lived to be 85 years old, and she was just a gorgeous woman, vain. She said her byline was, vain people are better looking. So, don't bother me. I'm going to put my makeup on. And we literally saw her rise from her deathbed, what we thought was their deathbed, 3 times. And the first thing she reached for was her pancake makeup and her lipstick. And when she would put her lipstick on, we knew that there was still something for her to do and say in life. But my mother continued to smoke. She was a Missoula kid. She danced in every bar here. She got fired from a couple of them. She loved everything about living. She flirted. She was pretty. She didn't have a gray hair in her head. I have more gray hair than she does. But I knew that as a 40-something, I had better not pick that battle about the smoking, even though we both knew that this was going to be the cause of her death. We knew it. But as she rationalized it, it was the only freedom that she had. So we chose that to go in those conversations up until maybe 3 days before she died. And I asked her how her smoking was working for her. And she said, well, not so good, but still, mind your own business. You also have to optimize your energy. Sometimes you have, in fact, my husband and I we now have a grandchild, and so we're in our 60s. We're not quite retired yet. We're still working in this, but our children are in their 30s, mid-30s, and they just do not want to have a conversation with us about our death or where we want to be buried or anything. They don't even want to talk to us about our financials. Nothing. It's none of their business. Patty just is believing that there's a green box somewhere that belonged to my dad, and that I'm going to fill that green box with information that she'll need. That's my daughter's attitude about our affairs. Fortunately, everything is in the green box, but I would really like to talk to her about it, but she's not going to. So as we drive over to Coeur d'Alene, my husband and I gather our energy to pick the time. Is it going to be when we're at Hudson's Hamburgers, or is it going to be at a time maybe we're all holding a puppy and having a mellow moment? We try to make openings for conversations. Sometimes I'm starting to forget things. I forget what we talked about last time. I don't have Alzheimer's yet. 1 out of 4 people will have it. But I think that caregiving and whose responsibility that will be is certainly a key discussion. They know, and I know, that we have an agreement that we will always be seeking the choices in life that will give us the most independence. And that's going to be in a living arrangement. It may be a medical treatment situation, whatever that might be. My husband and I are going to choose the least restrictive environment that we can be in. But we also know that there may be times when we can't make that decision. And so one of my things that I tell the 70-year-olds and I tell the 40-year-olds, don't make that promise that you will never fill in the blanks, because sometimes you just might find yourself sitting there having to make that decision. There's all kinds of things to do, ways to raise an issue. Raising issues about life and death and money matters is probably not the Thanksgiving table, especially with Uncle Frank and his secretive family and everybody else is around. Defend your position, but don't be defensive. I think that they're two different things, and that was one thing my mother always taught me, was never be defensive, because that's just like a wild animal can smell blood. If you begin to be defensive, people will find your weakness. If you defend your position and are certain about your philosophies or how you believe, whether or not I want to be on hospice, or how I feel about morphine or a self-directed physician-directed suicide or physician-directed death. Those things hit a family. That's a reality. Without having that discussion, I've seen in my 40 years of nursing practice in the home health and hospice world, just disasters, emotional disasters of the survivors. And a dying person who just lets go and just said, it's just no point staying around here to fight. These are the emotional things that you do, lastly, I like to talk about is trying to find points of agreement of what you want as a family or as an individual to leave as a legacy. Because, and I'm so interested, I'm just fascinated with my family history, and I'm learning every day about a new relative, or both my grandparents came from large families and from the New England area, and so we have roots that go way back, and it's really fun. But there were legacies that were left, philosophies and strength and silent suffering and dying with secrets, and such as those things that belong to families. That is part of the legacy that we have come together as a family and have decided that these are not the legacies that we want for this new baby. He's not going to believe that his grandmother dies with secrets. So these are choices that you can make. Putting yourself in the other person's shoes, it really does help if the 40-something person has children of their own. You still can't imagine having that discussion with your own child when you're talking to your mother. It's two different things. So essentially, those situations that come up have prompted my company to take a real interest in focusing on who decision makers are. And in our business here in Missoula, and we've been in business for over 6 years, it's going to be 7 years soon. Hard to believe, huh, Bernie? Because Bernie and I worked together for over 20 years ago at Partners, is that the decision maker, for the most part, of who decides what service and when it's going to take place in a person's home, in their assisted living facility, is a female daughter, generally aged about 45 to 50 years old, has a job and has children, still married. There's a strain in the marriage because of the time constraints of not going home right away. You stop and see how mom's doing, or you have 2 laundries to do, 2 checkbooks to do. I always said there was a book inside me, but finally somebody wrote the book. In summary, what we are attempting to do is to say that there are 2 sides to this story, and the more boomers who approach the age of 65 and 70, which is this coming year, actually, supposedly, is, I think the Earth is supposed to turn flat again or something. I don't know. In Washington, you never know what to believe, but when the boomers hit the silver tsunami, so to speak, I am part of that. I do think that we are going to see a much elevated kind of conversation. I'm actually like to leave with a very optimistic message, is that there are much, much more educated consumers today, very, very discerning about quality. They do not, 10 years ago, it all had to do whether something was free or paid for. Honestly, today, there is not the phobia about that kind of thing, and that's a good thing because resources are drying up in terms of what we can do for nothing. So I like to see educated consumers, but it comes from every family deciding what the legacy that they want to leave for their community and for their children, whether it be an inheritance or whether it be a state of mind. I happen to be quite optimistic. So with that, and I also, Jim knows, I've done this program with him, I have a standing joke with my children that I am already furious at them because someday they will take my keys away. And when I can't drive my Buick when I want to, I just pray that I will know when I should not drive before I hurt someone, because that's really what it's all about.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm going to come down there by you because I might strike a nerve with Nancy talking about driving, and I want to get out of her reach. As Mary Louise said, I'm a volunteer with AARP, and I'm a facilitator for the We Need to Talk program. The We Need to Talk is a free seminar that AARP offers that's geared directly at helping family members to have meaningful and successful conversations with older drivers about driver safety. This is an issue that more and more families are facing. We know statistically that we tend to live now 7 to 10 years longer than it is safe for us to drive. So more and more families are going to be faced with the situation where it's no longer safe for mom or dad to be behind the wheel, but how do I have that conversation with them? How do I sit them down and, as Nancy put it, take their keys away? Now, I have a video that I want to show you here, a little brief video that really gives you a good capitalization of the problem, and then we'll talk briefly about it.
For the first time, I could go anywhere, anytime, and I loved it.
I looked for any excuse to drive, to the store, pick up my grandmother. You name it, I couldn't get enough.
My wife and I would gather the kids in the station wagon and go to a drive-in movie. Those were good times.
When Jack and I retired, we packed up our RV and set off on our great adventure, a cross-country trip.
What does driving mean to you and the people in your life? A key to the car can be a key to life, freedom, and independence. What if you couldn't drive anymore? What if an older person in your family had to give up driving?
I've always been a good driver. I've been driving for about 60 years. It's a part of who I am.
Oh, I remember our first car like it was yesterday, a 1955 sedan. He loved that car.
It was a Turbo Fire V8. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I was so proud of that car.
When Dad would say, "Hey, let's go for a drive," we didn't stop to ask where to. We just piled into the back, and I'm not sure Dad knew where he was headed to, but it didn't matter, because we were going for a drive.
My husband does all the driving. I count on him to take me places, really everywhere I go.
Driving is nerve-wracking. I used to like it, but not anymore. Not the way drivers are today.
My mom, she's the type of person who likes to get out, go visiting, shopping, do volunteer work. She is always on the go.
I want to do what I want to do, when I want to do it. But I can't do that if I don't drive. I'd be a prisoner in my own home.
For older persons who need to limit or stop driving, being in the driver's seat has different meanings. For some, driving is part of their identity. For others, it's simply a way to get places. A person who doesn't really care about driving may be more agreeable to hanging up the keys, provided they could still get where they wanted to go. However, for the person who lives to grip the wheel, to go anywhere, anytime, your efforts to limit or stop his or her driving may be a greater challenge. Whatever the case, you want to understand and acknowledge what driving means to your loved one.
I told him, "Dad, I know that car means a lot to you. You put a lot of miles on that baby. Not driving is going to be a real loss for you, won't it? I know this is really hard for him."
Driving connects us to the world. A person should not have to limit driving unnecessarily or prematurely. Family members are actually in a good position to know about the driving skills of loved ones.
Yeah, I've been in the car with Grandma a few times when she's had some close calls. Mom tells me to sit in the back. It's safer.
Well, since I stopped driving a few years ago, my wife has done all the driving. She doesn't see as well as she used to. She's missed a few stop signs. Really, I'm afraid to drive with her now, but what choice do I have?
As far as I can tell, Dad seems to get around okay. But then again, I don't drive with him very often. I have noticed some scrapes on his car. He didn't say anything to me about it, so I didn't either. I don't think it's a big deal, at least not yet.
I'm fine. I've been driving without an accident for over 40 years. Just because I've had a couple of fender benders recently, everyone gets excited. And not one of them was my fault, not one. Now, people drive crazy these days. I would know if I needed to do anything about my driving, and I don't.
Neither age nor health problems alone are reasons to curtail driving. However, health conditions can affect driving ability. So, how do you know if an older person with or without health problems is safe to drive? Observe your older relative driving. When riding as a passenger, make a mental note of any driving behaviors that are a problem. It might be useful during future conversations if you actually jot down the date and what you observed. Look for a change in driving skills from the past, or a pattern of more frequent mistakes. Less serious or infrequent warning signs might suggest the need to limit driving, such as avoiding nighttime or rush hour driving. More serious or frequent signs might mean the need to stop driving immediately. Your observations over time will help your family act according to the situation, not overreact or underreact. Your factual notes may be useful when talking with other family members or medical professionals. Conversations that include actual observations rather than general opinions can be less emotional and more constructive.
After Mom's accident, I was really worried. But then I rode with her on several occasions, and I could tell her driving was just fine. Really.
When I put my observations down on paper, it forced me to realize the problem could be serious. We just couldn't put off doing something about it any longer.
What if you need to talk with an older family member about driving? For older adults and family members, this is often a dreaded conversation. Research with older drivers conducted by the Hartford and MIT Age Lab revealed some insights that can help craft conversations that are sensitive and successful.
This is the person that taught me how to drive. Now I'm supposed to tell him he may not be a good driver? That's not a conversation I want to have.
I didn't say anything to the kids. I didn't want them to worry. And I didn't want them to say anything to upset my husband. I knew how he would react.
If Mom doesn't drive, then I'm the one stuck taking her everywhere. I don't know if I'm coming or going as it is.
Putting off conversations with an older relative or other family member can lead to a more difficult conversation later, or worse, to a crash causing serious personal harm.
I had to be the bad guy because my sister didn't want to have anything to do with it. Everyone saw what was happening. It's just that no one wanted to do anything about it. So I did. I just told him he was done driving. It wasn't pretty.
I don't think anybody understood how bad her driving was. Everybody just thought I was being mean.
I knew something was up. Phone calls, the quiet chats when they thought I wasn't listening. If they had a problem with me, I wish they would just say so.
How can you have conversations about driving that are both sensitive and successful? Several small conversations are better than one big conversation. Each conversation can serve different purposes. You might begin with learning about specific transportation needs or possible concerns about driving under certain circumstances. Another conversation might focus on suggestions on how to limit driving risks, such as not driving long distances. Or the safety concerns may be such that the goal of a conversation may be to have your older relative stop driving altogether.
When my son first talked to me about driving, I got angry. Wouldn't you? Then I thought about it. And when he brought it up again, I had to admit he was right.
The family member with the greatest chance of success should take the lead in talking with an older driver. Avoid ganging up on the driver. Most married persons prefer to hear about driving first from their spouse, then from their doctor or adult children. Those who live alone prefer to hear either from their adult children or their doctor. The last person an older driver wants to hear from is a police officer. This may be a last approach, but only after all other approaches have failed.
I couldn't hide my health problems from my kids. They watched me drive. At first, I resented their meddling in my life, but I knew they were just watching out for me.
Well, I guess if I have to hear the bad news, I'd like to hear it from my wife. She's been telling me what to do for the last 50 years.
Look for opportunities to initiate a conversation, such as when someone mentions the road conditions or a news story about an accident. Changes in health or medications or an appointment with a doctor are all appropriate times to address questions about driving.
My daughter took me to the doctor, and he gave me a new prescription. She asked if it was all right if I could drive. The doctor said it was better not to. What can I say? He's the doctor.
If an older relative is limiting or stopping driving, you'll need to have ongoing conversations about how he or she will remain active and engaged in life. You need a transportation plan. Arrange rides with friends and family. Get information on alternatives, such as public transit or special transportation for older adults in the community. It's a good idea to avoid having all the responsibility fall on any one person.
I thought it would be the end of me when I stopped driving, but the kids help me by driving me around when I need to go places, and I use the senior van sometimes. You know, I really miss driving, sitting in the big seat, but I still get a chance to get out. That's what really counts.
The transition from driver to passenger is not always easy. Your support and understanding is necessary before, during, and after driving changes are made. Understand the meaning of driving to help determine your approach. Regularly observe driving behavior to get the facts and have multiple, well-planned conversations. Taking these steps will allow you to be sensitive and successful.
My kids genuinely are concerned about my safety. Truth is, they don't want me to stop driving any more than I do.
It's actually brought our family closer together. We have more conversations now, not just about driving. We've got in the habit of just checking in with each other.
I am so glad we had that conversation. Just knowing what might have happened, I couldn't live with that. We're all sleeping better now.
By taking these positive steps to look after the safety and transportation needs of the older adult you care about, you may find that talking about driving is not as difficult as you thought it might be.
So you recognize anybody in there? Yeah. See yourself in there maybe? You bet. We're all drivers. We all have this shared history. Probably right here in this room, we have a cumulative 700 or 800 years of driving experience behind us. I know from the driver safety classes that I teach that even with people who've been driving 60 or 70 years, they can still vividly remember that first time they drove a car. That sticks with us. That was such a huge step forward in our journey toward adulthood. So now, 40, 50 years later, we take it for granted. I'm willing to bet that with maybe one or two exceptions, everybody here tonight drove here. We rely on, you're one of the two exceptions. We rely on driving so much we don't even think about it anymore. But think to yourself, if you woke up tomorrow morning and you could never drive again, how would your life change? And how would you feel about that? So think of that loved one in your life who might be an adult parent. It might be an adult aunt or uncle. It could even be a spouse or a close friend who might be facing this situation in the near future. Put yourself in their shoes. If they couldn't drive ever again, how is their life going to change and how are they going to feel about it? These are big issues, serious issues. The video talks about three elements that I want to just re-emphasize. One is this concept of the meaning of driving. Finding out how driving means to that individual helps us to formulate what type of a conversation, what type of approach we want to take with that person. For some people, driving is not a big deal. It's just a way to get around. They don't think too much of it. If they couldn't drive ever again, not a problem. I can walk to the store, I can take the bus or whatever. For other people, it's a very big deal, especially for guys. It's something in our genes about having a car. You know, if Dad spends 3 hours every Sunday watching NASCAR drive around in circles, that may tell you how he feels about driving. Maybe it's a big deal in his life. They talk in the video too about making observations. It's really key. We don't want to overreact to a single incident, but you should observe that person's driving ability. We're looking for a pattern. We're looking for a pattern of problem driving and an increase in the frequency with which those problems occur. That tells us that this is a serious situation. All of us go through physical changes as we age, and those changes affect our ability to drive safely. Sometimes all we need to do is just a little personal tune-up to get through those things, but other times these changes can be red flags, and that's what we need to look for. And the third thing is the conversation itself, sitting down and actually having that conversation. When should you have that conversation? Right now. You should start talking about driving today. The first time you use the word driving in a sentence should not be the day you walk in there and go, "Mom, give me the keys, you're not driving anymore." It's best to have multiple conversations, to get the subject of cars and driving on the table now, so people feel comfortable about talking about it. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Your parents, your loved ones, they know other people who are going through the same situation and have had to limit or give up driving entirely. When that happens, that's a great opportunity to sit down with that person and have a conversation with them. But you want to work up to that conversation when you actually talk about limiting or stopping driving altogether. But if you're going to do that, you've got to consider driving alternatives, transportation alternatives, because the first question you're going to get is, okay, if I can't drive, then who's going to take me to church, and who's going to get me to the grocery store, and who's going to get me to my bridge game? When we talk about limiting a person's driving, we don't want to limit their living. We still want them to be an active part of their community. And that's where sometimes we have to rely on other sources, the Agency on Aging and other friends and family members we have to kind of pick up some of that slack. I have some handouts on the table there. A couple of them I want to point out to you in particular. One is this one. It's the We Need to Talk booklet. This is the sister booklet to the video that you just saw. Another one is called At the Crossroads. This deals with Alzheimer's and dementia. If you have a family history of Alzheimer's or dementia, or you believe that might be an issue, then please pick up a copy of this before you leave here tonight. And finally, as I said, sometimes with an older driver, the problem is something simple that we can correct through just giving them a tune-up. And one of those tune-ups is the AARP Driver Safety Program. This is a program that most of you know by its old name of 55 Alive. It's been around for a very, very long time. It is specifically geared toward the older driver. It talks about the changes that we go through as we age, how those changes affect our ability to drive safely, and how we can compensate for those changes to continue to be safe drivers. Because we want people to drive for as long as it's safe for them to do so. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bernie O'Connor. I'm Programs Officer from Missoula Aging Services, and I think I'll tell a little story to segue into my part of the presentation. When I first started with Aging Services, I started as an information specialist in our senior helpline, and that meant anything that came through the door or any call that came in, we try to problem solve, basically. And for the first few weeks, it went pretty well for me. You know, people asked pretty simple questions about housing, about transportation, things like that. I had a gentleman come in, he was probably in his early 50s, and he was having an issue with his mom. His mom insisted on driving. She was well into her 80s and just was not up to driving. He had gone as far as to dismantle the distributor cap on her car. But he knew that she had neighbors put it back together, and she was just trouble on the road, as he said. I gave him some options. We talked about at that time it was 55 Alive, that class, and he went away somewhat happy, I think. About a week and a half later, this elderly woman shows up in my office, tells me that she's in a lot of trouble. She bought a car for $200 from the next door neighbor. She was in a car accident. She totaled the car. She asked that the police not be called, and she was going to make arrangements with the person who ran into her. They never called her back, and she was afraid that her son was going to find out. And it was literally the mother of this fellow that had been in the office a couple of weeks later. And I could not share that he had been there, nor could I have called him because of confidentiality. So we decided that maybe I could be a facilitator of a meeting between the two of them. Maybe that would be something, and maybe she could talk about it, and hopefully he could help her be reimbursed for the damage to the car, and he could talk to the neighbors about all the wonderful help they were giving her in fixing the distributor cap and selling her cars and things like that. And that did happen. And that was a very good lesson for me, because we don't have all the answers, but a lot of times it's a matter of just having that conversation, being the convener of those conversations. Let me explain a little bit about what our agency is and where it comes from. Back in 1965, when Congress passed the Medicare laws, they also created the Administration on Aging, because the intention was to promote the delivery of services to older adults. They had the foresight to see that these boomers were eventually going to age, and there was going to be a significant stress put on systems in our country. So the Administration on Aging was part of the Older Americans Act, and the Older Americans Act created funding sources and programs to help support older adults living as independently as possible in communities. And one of the very first acts was to create the state units on aging within state government to oversee the area agency on aging system, and that's what our office is. It's an area agency. The formula for the state of Montana is the agencies cover an area according to the amount of older adults in that area. To give you an idea of breakdown of older adults throughout Montana, our agency, when it was first created, was just Missoula County. We now have Ravalli County also, and that's per their request. They wanted to be part of our agency. That's how many older adults are in this area. We're Area 11, by the way, area agency system in Montana. Area 1 is the entire eastern side of the state, from Canada to Wyoming. That's 17 counties. Their issues and dynamics of service of delivery are much different than ours, and the lack of services there are unbelievable. But let me return to the Older Americans Act. In 1972, they added the nutrition services, and that's the flagship of our agency. The Meals on Wheels programs, the congregate meals. We have a Diners Club program for more active older adults. In 78, they moved the Ombudsman program from the Health Department over to the Administration on Aging. And Ombudsmen are advocates for older adults in long-term care settings, assisted living facilities and nursing homes. The last significant act or program that was added to the Older Americans Act was the Family Caregiver Program. And I think that's what we're really talking about tonight, is family caregiving. Our agency is a private nonprofit. There are over 655 area agencies throughout the United States. Every area of the United States has an area agency that covers that area. But they may be part of a state government office, they may be part of a county government office, they may be a private for-profit or nonprofit. It's just, it's a patchwork of services and systems. We have a governing board. We have an administrative team, and we have a value added in our agency in respect that we provide direct services, and that's the programs I oversee, such as nutrition. But we also have a volunteer services component that is significant in our ability to provide services that we do. And I'll explain a little bit more about these programs. The gateway for our services is the senior helpline or information services. That is, if there's anything you could walk away from, any kind of information you could walk away from this meeting with today that would be important, is that is the number to call. If you're trying to work with an older adult, if you are an older adult looking for solutions, call our main number and ask for the senior helpline. When I started, we had 2 information specialists. We now have 6, and it's been 10 years, and that's how quickly we've grown. We have a budget of over $3 million, and that too in itself is a patchwork of diverse funding sources. We receive some money from the Older Americans Act from federal government, some from the state. We receive county mill levy money. We seek out a lot of different grants and supports through the private sector. But even with all that, we still falls short of meeting the entire needs of the older population in our area. The information specialists with our programs are certified through the state of Montana as information specialists for older adults and as information specialists for people with disabilities now. We are considered an aging and disability resource center because one of the things that is easily recognizable is that a lot of the needs of people with disabilities are the same as older adults. The quickest growing population are people 85 and older. And 50% of that population has some need of assistance with activities of daily living, meal preparation, hygiene, transportation, which is very similar to people who are much younger but living with a disability. They may have the same needs for activities of daily living. So rather than creating a new entitlement program, we have shifted gears and are following a best practice throughout the United States and have become an ADRC. These information specialists are also state health insurance program counselors. That means they're versed in constantly educating themselves on Medicare and Medicaid, veterans benefits, long-term care. They are also ombudsmen. They wear many hats, but they are also ombudsmen for as advocates for residents of long-term care facilities. And we are in every long-term care facility in this county every month. We attend resident council meetings. We created a family council group to bring families together who are finding there are issues in the facilities that their loved ones live in. And they are also reverse annuity mortgage counselors through the Montana Board of Housing. And this is a program that allows older adults to tap into the equity within their homes. One thing we know about Montana is a lot of older adults are income poor, but they have stability through their property. So this allows them to draw from that equity and remain living in their home. There's a lot more detail to that, but that's the thumbnail sketch of the services they provide. Our nutrition programs, of course, our Meals on Wheels program is highly recognizable. It's a high-profile program in this community. We served over 92,000 meals in Missoula County last year alone. We have satellite Meals on Wheels programs in Seeley Lake, in Condon, in Potomac, and Ravalli County has programs out of their congregate sites all through that county. We serve out of Missoula, south all the way to Ravalli County to Alberton, and Alberton has its own Meals on Wheels program that bleeds into Missoula County, goes down Petty Creek. We go to 9 Mile, we go out to Clinton area, we're up Bonner. Much of the county is covered for the Meals on Wheels program, and we're targeting homebound adults. The Administration on Aging does provide funding for people 60 and older, but we still have to find other resources to meet that demand. We also serve adults with disabilities 18 to 60. This is a unique situation because not many Meals on Wheels programs do that, but we do recognize that need in the community. It is also our commitment to being an aging and disability resource center, that we can provide that service and help people remain living independently. The Senior Diners Club is a coupon program for more active older adults, people who can get out and actually go to a restaurant. We have participating restaurants that use these coupons, and they have a specific menu that older adults can pick meals from. The idea behind this is besides helping people stretch that budget, a lot of times older adults cannot simply afford to go out and eat. It also gets them out of an isolated situation. It gets them into a social environment. And we will actually create little congregate meal parties, if you will, in these restaurants to bring people out, to congregate, to socialize with peers, and also to provide them information about services and benefits that might be out there that they may not know about, changes in the Medicare laws, hopefully soon on health care reform and what that means for them. We also provide a liquid supplement program. We provide insure products at cost, and this is a special contract we have with Ross Products. We purchase it at cost, we sell it at cost, and we do deliver too. And this is something we realize liquid supplement products are very expensive, and this, for those people in need, at least this helps them somewhat in the cost. It's a fraction of the cost you see in grocery stores. And there's the value added that we deliver too. We also provide farmers market coupons to older adults. This is through the USDA. It's a great program, especially for Missoula, since we have a couple of farmers markets. And we also provide that service to homebound older adults. We have volunteers who purchase by proxy. And we also have been working on trying to get a consistent transportation system to the markets for older adults who can make it, because we would really stress that it would be better to be there than to just have a volunteer serve in purchasing the produce for them, because it's an event and it's a social event. We also provide funding to the food bank for the Roots program, which is a commodities delivery program from older adults. We also have a case management program, and this is we have social workers and RNs on staff. We have in that case management program, a Medicaid program which serves people who are at nursing home level of care and but can remain living either independently or in an assisted living facility. So this keeps them out of the nursing home. It's a cost-effective program in respect that the average cost of a nursing home in Montana, according to AARP, is about $60,000. So this keeps them remaining in their home. The Medicaid budget, on average, for one of our clients is about $15,000. So you can see the cost effectiveness of that. And I want to talk a little bit more about trends towards the end of my presentation, and how that is a significant trend we're looking at for people not only on Medicaid, but people of higher income brackets. This program also provides a respite service, and these are to spell caregivers who are working with family members or friends, and allow them to get out of the house once in a while to catch their breath. This is a program that we have limited funding for, but because we have volunteer services, we have a significant number of volunteers who are willing to serve in this capacity, and it has allowed us to really expand that program in a very short period of time. We also have homemaker services for low-income individuals who simply can't afford to pay for a homemaker to come in, but absolutely have that need. That is a part of dignity for individuals, and as Nancy was talking about her mom and fixing herself up, we recognize that too, that is a part of dignity, and we have this database that our information specialists maintain. It's over 600 resources that may be of help to seniors, and one of them I know is a beautician that'll go in the home of seniors, because that can make somebody's day. It really energizes an individual when they're used to receiving that type of service, and the only thing that's barring them is the fact that they're isolated and homebound. Our volunteer services provide the RSVP programs, the foster grandparent programs, which are older adults that serve as mentors to young students in the school systems and daycares, and the Senior Companion Program, which works with isolated seniors, and that little bit too also is a transportation component, getting those isolated seniors out and into the community. These are valuable programs for us that are extremely cost effective because they are manned by volunteers. Let's talk a little bit about trends. One of the things that we're looking at is the National Association for Area Agencies on Aging has a program called Project 2020, which is, its aim is by the year 2020 having person-centered access to information centers all through the United States. Now, we are kind of ahead of the curve in respect that model is the ADRC. It's what's called the no wrong door approach, that if somebody should come to our agency, we're not going to send them to another agency to provide informational services. We should have that information at our agency. And in turn, too, an independent living center that works with people with disabilities, such as Summit, would also have the same information, would provide the same counseling that we would for individuals who have disabilities who need access to resources. We are also looking at prevention. Right now we're running a diabetes exercise program with YMCA. It's free of charge to people with type 2 diabetes. It's a 12-week program with cash incentives to participate. It is a study through Healthways and the National Association for Area Agencies on Aging to see the impact of exercise on people with that diagnosis. If it can actually improve their A1C tests and their blood pressure and things that are indicators that how well they are doing or not doing. One of the things it's teaching us is that it's really hard to encourage people to take care of themselves. We have 8 people currently participating in that program, and I really shook the trees in this town. I was with the diabetes programs at both hospitals and Partnership Health Center and the senior center here promoting it. But really, it is a two-pronged intent. One of them is that people want to shift into their older age with a quality of life. And really the only way to do that is to take care of yourself. So we want to promote that to disease prevention, provide opportunities for people to take care of themselves, to exercise. And I guess one of the most important things is that this is something we cannot do on our own as an area agency, and that is why you'll see members of our agency on the Special Transit Advisory Council with Mountain Line talking about transportation issues, with the At-Risk Housing Coalition about housing issues in this town. You'll see us on the Coalition for Disability Rights, talking about the shared needs and concerns we have with systems advocacy, with legislature. So it's a relationship with other agencies that have the same intentions that we do, helping their populations that they work with remain living independently with a quality of life. But now we do recognize too that it's a much bigger community conversation, much bigger. The conversation we're having today, the concerns you have are shared throughout the community, but a lot of people are living in isolation and fear because they don't know what their options are. And it's important to have it with city government, county government, state government individuals. It's also important to have it within citizens in the community. What do you want this community to look like? Where do you want to live, and how do you want to live within it? And what will make it livable? And it is more than just the delivery of services that I've mentioned through our agency. It's about accessibility. It's about quality nutrition, quality environments. And this is more than a conversation that's just happening in the United States. It's happening globally. When I attend conferences, you'll see that the concerns in Montana are the same as they are in Sydney, Australia, or in Africa, or in China. The dynamics and economic pictures and cultures are much different, but truly the issues that older adults are facing in those cultures are the same here. So what I'm seeing in the trends in the United States is that the area agency offices are tending to be the conveners, the facilitators of these conversations, and they're going out and they're seeking forums to present what we've done historically and where we'd like to go in providing services, and how older adults have expressed what they want. If they are going to be in a nursing home, what should that nursing home look like? And there are models out there that veer away from the medical model, that are more home-like settings, that acknowledge the dignity of the individuals and allow them the empowerment to make decisions within those facilities rather than having something mandated for them. The same with assisted living facilities. But also in this Project 2020 is the encouragement to divert funding for Medicaid or long-term care, so the money follows the person rather than somebody ending up in the nursing home, spending down their assets, and ending up on Medicaid. The idea is that if we assist them in creating a pathway that allows them to sustain themselves, living in the environment they want to live in, that's what they want, and that's what we want to do. And we can find that it can be cost effective. It takes planning, though. One of the things we're participating in right now is called a Community Living Project, which is a grant from the Administration on Aging. And our aim has consistently been to work with people of the lower economic bracket. But what the Administration on Aging is asking of us is to target a higher income individual who would have the same needs. And work with them fiscally, and work with them in advising them of what their options are within the community to help them sustain where they are and prevent them from having to spend down to Medicaid and then eventually end up in a nursing home. So we are piloting a project. There are a couple of models out there already, and we're taking the best practices from that, but we're also making it signature to this community and how we can serve people, and again, it's a pilot project, so it's going to be some small numbers, but it's going to inform individuals in the bigger picture on what we can do in the future. A second part of this is a veterans-directed home and community-based services, where we will be working with vets 18 and older, and also, of course, population 60 and older who are veterans. And this, too, is identifying veterans in the community that are at risk for nursing home placement, and what we can do to prevent that. What kind of services can we access? What kind of environmental modifications to homes? Whatever it may be, what we need to help them sustain living in the community. And this is not only identifying and helping them with physical disabilities, but the comprehensive picture, the full spectrum of services they may need. If it's post-traumatic stress disorder, if it's mental health issues, even if it's the need to seek out a job, whatever it might be, we're trying to address that need to help them continue living independently within the community. So these are some of the trends that we're seeing nationwide, and some of the trends we've tapped into and are attempting models in this town. But again, it is a bigger conversation. It's a conversation for the whole community to have, and who better than the baby boomers to be to be part of that conversation? You know, through the years they've been vocal in what they have identified as their needs. So I think as they age, they will continue to identify their needs and what they want, and they will be changing the horizon of aging services as time goes on. Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions for the panel?
We can just open it to questions.
I have one question. Bernie, you're talking about trends and the needs in this community. It's a bigger conversation than just this room or just our parents or ourselves. For Missoula area, this larger community, infrastructure, and I know that you're interfacing with the other government agencies and having these conversations with them, and hopefully being in a position to advise. What are our major needs for this growing population in the next 20 years? Infrastructure, transportation, housing. What do you see as the most important things that we need to look at and maybe start having a conversation wherever we go?
I don't think anything is isolated in respect to need. It is a combination of things. It's the visibility of homes, of housing. It is the need for transportation, because we live we're a rural state. We're actually a frontier state, but what are the transportation needs? How do we adapt systems to communities to meet the needs in those communities? Just regarding nursing homes, we'd love to see the people transition from a nursing home into the community, or prevent even going to a nursing home. But part of this community conversation too is that nursing homes for some communities are an employer. It is a central employer for some of these smaller communities. So what does that mean? What does that mean when you lose that employer? That people are great living individually and independently, but what happens to that facility, and what happens to the employees of that facility? So it's identifying options for people. Maybe a foster care system that needs to loosen its regulatory requirements that allows people to live in homes and provides caregiver pay. That's one of the things within the community living program that we are very excited about, is that this allows family members to be paid for providing services that otherwise may be not provided to the individual, or can't be provided because of rural isolation. The community living program pilot projects that came before us identified that need in very rural areas in the United States, and that it's one thing to have a pool of money for care, but if you don't have the caregiver to provide that, what's the use? They're going to end up in the nursing home in their local community. So a self-direct program that, again, it follows one of our missions, is to empower the individual. It also allows those family members to be paid for the services that they render. And actually, it was modeled through Medicaid a few years back. One of the agencies I worked with disappeared because of it. No, it was a good move. It was a good thing, because it provided consumer choice to people on Medicaid who needed personal care in the home. And that self-direct program is active right now in Montana.
I have a couple of things to say about that. This doesn't have anything to do with our business. However, in the last 4 or 5 years, my husband and I have been very interested in the housing question, and the models that we see today are the best that we've been able to come up with so far with the resources that we have. I believe that there is an appropriate level of care for people. There are people clearly in the right place. They are very ill. They're requiring hands-on care 24 hours a day. That is, unfortunately, what we see as a couple, we're healthy, and we follow a lot of other models in other states. And what we've seen are, we go to every type of seminar, really not very much governmental involvement. I guess the government has its hands full anyway, coming up in the next 4 years anyway, with a new law coming up about health care. But I know that what we see is not what we really want. I guess I can, and I can't say exactly what it is that I want, but I do know that there are models in Seattle, California, lots of other states. Minnesota has places that have the physical structure and design, and I'm sure Bernie knows about these and Aging Services are very on top of this, is where once you've made this decision that you're going to move out of the Elm Street homestead, which is what everybody's dream is, and in Montana particularly, moving off the ranch concept, is that the concept of ownership is really important. The concept of aging in place, having an ability to be who you are and not have your identity change when you go into a facility and there's a pecking order. It's a lot like high school. And we all know this. If you're the new person in a facility, you cannot sit at that table. Some of the facilities have rules where you can't be cliquey, but it did remind me a little bit about the cafeteria over here at Hellgate High School when I was going, when Jesus was in my class. The thing is that what we have is we've got this huge home, and of course the market is an issue, but we don't want to let go of that home yet. It's way too big for us. It's way too much for us to manage. It's not what we need, but we can't see any model that exists today that is for us. And I guess, I know I hear the mayor, I think John Engen has been a real shot in the arm to this dialogue. I will say that in the 70s, you could not swing a dead cat in Missoula without running into a senior who thought it was really a great thing to go down to the Clark Fork. And that's how they would say it. I'm going to the Clark Fork. That is a wonderful, wonderful concept. That beautiful site, that beautiful view still makes me feel great. It was an aspiration of my grandparents to move there, but they got to stay at home. That's really where a lot of the dialogue is going to have to take place, is that there is so much poverty, there is so much economic difference, but when it comes down to where you live, when you're aging, it does become a more level playing field, I think. I know very wealthy people who have the same needs exactly as people who don't get a very big check. And they, for one reason or another, we want people who have the economic means to also be able to continue to contribute to our economy. That's a whole, I'm kind of a health policy economist guru. For a nurse, that's really odd. But you start thinking about resources and the limitation of resources, and now we're going to see a real redistribution of them. And it really does, the housing situation in Missoula could be something absolutely innovative. This community they came up with the Clark Fork, with the old Eagles Manor. Those were beautiful concepts in the 70s. What is the new concept for 2020? I guess I yet have seen what model that is for me and my husband. We just don't see it. And it's not taking anything away from any of the existing places. It's just, I want to still be connected to the theater. I want to still be connected to Grizzly games, Lady Grizz games. I know a lot of that has to do with transportation. It has a lot to do with all kinds of things. But, and I'm not even particularly interested in sitting around with people in my own age. I like younger people. In fact, I think that's what keeps us young, is interacting with younger people. So I guess we don't see ourselves living with the class of 65. They're gone, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. That's just my comment.
I would
my mom lives down at Macintosh Loop.
Mhm.
You're familiar with that.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful system. Everybody pretty much knows what time this person comes and goes, kind of keep track of each other. So what I see for our age group as we get older, more individual neighborhood type of living in a pod with a community center to gather would be more to our liking. And I think there's one contractor in Missoula, I know Greg McHugh is kind of trending towards that, bless his heart, because when we were looking for a place to move mom and dad, ideally we wanted to get them into Missoula. We could not find a single level dwelling.
Oh, amen, sister.
A laundry room downstairs, who in their 80s needs a steep staircase to do laundry? So we ended up getting a flat out in Florence, modified it. It was perfect because when Dad needed the care, we had the ramp, we had the wide doorways, everything was perfect. But now where Mom's at, Macintosh, her house is pretty much designed that way too. It's all one level, everything's perfect. I wanted to bring up one more thing. You were talking about foster care for elders. I forwarded you that article from Seattle a couple months ago. I don't know if you had time to read it. That would have to have tremendous oversight. Washington does do this. It's gotten totally out of control because they don't have enough people to monitor. There has been some severe abuses, really sad cases. As people experience economic downturn, they're taking in foster parents for care in order to make the mortgage.
It's the same abuses we see in the child system.
Exactly. So they're not really getting the care. It's a nice system, granted, if it has the proper oversight, but without monitoring, it can be a disaster for the poor elderly.
Yeah. But I think it would be more manageable in a community of this size
Yes.
than, say,
Seattle.
the Puget Sound area, which
Right.
is 3 million plus. And that's one reason the ombudsman program exists. And I can testify. I won't name the assisted living facility, but at one point it was one of the best in town, and then it wasn't so good. But now I see it trending, and I know it's because it was more than just the ombudsman's actions, but it was the conversation that was created because the ombudsman heard the needs of the residents, and now I see some amazing things happening in this facility. But we are allowed to go to a foster home, but only when there's a complaint made with the ombudsman program right now through licensure. So, that's after the fire. That's unfortunately when we can show up. So you're right. It will need some oversight, and it may even take on a different form than a foster home per se. Because when you look at the continuum of care, and in respect to what you were talking about, finding some place to live, what that might look at. We've looked at models of elder campuses,
Right.
where there's independent living and it transitions to some supports for activities of daily living, all the way to the other end to full nursing home skilled care needs, and what that would look like. Boston has the Beacon Hill Project, which is something to look at that might work within a community like this. But there are a lot of different things. Bill Thomas, who created the Eden Alternative, which was to provide quality within long-term care settings, has now a project called the Greenhouse Project, where he indeed takes the money that would be used to create a medical model nursing home facility and create something that is somewhat like a wagon wheel, where the hub is the nursing station. It is where your skilled staff monitor and do the paperwork and monitor the call light system, but the spokes to the outside are the homes of the individuals having those needs, and the individuals who live in that home, who would be in a medical model be nursing home patients, are now residents of that home. If the nursing staff shows up, they knock and enter. It is not their home. It is not the same as a facility. individuals within those homes have say on how those homes are run. They can make choices. They can participate in meal preparation. And that's just one model.
You're right, and you know, other models too, friends of ours, my husband was in the military, somebody got the good idea as a contractor to decide to cater to certain communities that have at least something in common. The University of Washington alumnus and faculty, retired faculty, have built their own campus, living campus, that is proximal to the campus of UW. And there are tunnel systems from this place with golf carts so that these people can go to the library and they can attend the Husky games. And so that's one concept, is finding you know, what the heck, that just because they wear the same colors on Saturday, that's one commonality, but they can still mind their own business. The Macintosh Loop concept, when that first came out, it's a 55 plus. It does have a governance of sorts. There's a center clubhouse where anyone can have access for anything, yet you can still build your fence and have your animals. And you know, I don't think they allowed chickens there yet, but you know, Missoula, we gotta have everything. But and I'm a native, so you know, I take everything that comes, that they throw at me in terms of our eccentricity and our independence. But I do think that sitting on the other end, having worked 40 years as a nurse, my career spans the Medicare program. I started being a nurse in 1966. And I've worked in the public sector and worked in the nonprofit sector for 35 of those 40 years. And what I am working for myself in a what you would call for-profit or whatever, I don't know. Whenever those profits can come by, I'm gonna be so happy. But what I do see is that it takes both. It takes the public awareness. It takes the models, the things that Bernie does every single day to find ideas, little forums like this. There may be a kernel of an idea that maybe someone with resources says, I'm gonna run with this. I just heard that transportation is a real big importance. And so I'm gonna be real creative and I'm gonna make a niche. That's what these military people did. They invested in the property. They invested in the homes. They had the architects design things so that it was easy for them. They actually, they negotiate contracts with healthcare providers to come in and bring them their foot care and their eye exams and things so that they don't have to be driven all over California. That's certainly something that the university area, I know we've talked about, it's been very controversial. They will, I hope, the golf course, I hope we can keep that. I still love hole 3 more than anything in my life, but there was a concept about housing development for seniors to be on South Campus. Now they need the campus. They need it for their programs. They've got programs or students in trailers. That's not acceptable either. Our kids need to have decent campus. So, you know, it's the same dollar, and it is going to take continual, I think, cooperation and listening. I think that's the thing that the boomers do understand, is that you can't always get your own way. We sure as heck tried. We did get Vietnam over, but geez, it took too long. But the thing is that we want our economy to be able to still move. And that is going to take innovation, not just public programs and public ideas. That's why the involvement of the government or entities, it has to be this a charrette kind of come together to see the ideas and just throw ideas up on the wall. Because I think Missoula is, in Missoula County and Ravalli County, don't we have one of the largest percent of growth in seniors, I think, of the whole state?
Fourth county, Missoula.
Fourth
Ravalli-
county,
Ravalli's
yeah. I
in-
mean, it's just incredible. But I just think that we can do it, whatever that might be. But I think every person in this room has a different concept. My concept of getting older is not living in that great big house that we built to raise our children in. We did that, educated them, they're gone, we don't need it. I got one grandchild, I still have too much room for it. So, I don't know what the answer is, but it certainly is education, education, education. Any other questions? It's getting late. You guys are walking, right? Biking or walking? Okay.
Well, thank you. Any more questions at all? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.